Hello, thanks for tuning in to Undercurrent, a current affairs show about Perth, made in Perth by Perth people. We're very happy to have you with us this evening, and we're looking forward to bringing you the stories that affect you. Tonight, we'll be speaking to WA Media Award winner Theo Fakos about some of his incredible photography. We catch up with Jeremy Garlett, and Nick Hayes will have a chat with David Flanagan, Managing Director of Atlas Iron. Let's get into our first story. Each year, thousands of unwanted pets get abandoned and destroyed because they're being unruly, aggressive, or their owners have just had a change of heart. The sad fact is the destruction of animals can easily be avoided with basic training at the early stages of your pet's life. Journalist Gerard Ward spoke to dog trainer Georgia Karagias about some simple training techniques owners can do to make sure their new puppy is a friend for life.
What are the common mistakes that new owners may have when they're bringing their puppy home?
Number one mistake is usually not using confinement training, not using a crate and not using a puppy pen, and that means that the puppy pees and poos all over the house and chews the furniture, chews your prized possessions, and pretty quickly gets segregated outside. And of course, when a puppy is left outside, they develop utterly predictable behaviour problems such as barking, digging, escaping, ripping or washing off the line, etc. So that's really important that a good toileting routine is started as soon as possible. Another common mistake is that people wait until the pup's fully vaccinated to socialise them with other dogs and people, and of course after 16 weeks of age it's too late. So even though your puppy's not fully vaccinated yet, enrol in a good puppy kindy class run by a dog trainer, and also you can take your puppy out cradling them in your arms. You can take them to a local cafe and sit and watch the world go by, maybe give them a pig's ear to chew on. Another mistake that people make is to not do training. It's really important, just as the child goes through 12 years of school, that a dog goes through a good 12 months of schooling. Statistically, the average lifespan of a dog in Australia is 2 years. Oh, wow. So if you think of how many old dogs you know, there must be an awfully high number of young dogs being put to sleep, unfortunately, and it's due to behaviour problems. So the pinnacle of a pet dog and their training is toilet training, because as soon as they're toilet trained, they're able to spend time in the house, and that actually gets rid of a lot of the social problems that happen with a dog who lives outside. Unfortunately, when that doesn't happen and the dog's segregated outside, around 9 months of age the dog becomes pretty much a lunatic, and unfortunately at that time that's when a lot of dogs are relinquished to pounds or shelters, rehomed, or unfortunately sometimes just let out of the gate.
So what are the first things someone should remember when they're bringing a puppy into a new home?
It's really important that they decide on the rules. So everyone in the family sit down to the table and agree whether the puppy's allowed on the furniture or not, which rooms they're allowed in or not, whether they're allowed to jump up on people or not. Secondly, the family takes a trip down to the local pet supply store and purchases lots of enrichment aids, Kongs, treat balls, Nyla bones, and of course a crate and a puppy pen to manage the pup's behaviour inside and help with toilet training. And thirdly, enrol as soon as possible into a wonderful puppy kindy class run by a qualified dog trainer who uses modern reward-based training methods.
What essentially happens in one of these training classes?
Okay, so a kindy class is primarily a socialisation class. So we do go over socialisation with people, with other puppies of course, and with different surfaces and toys and objects and things like that. We also do some basic manners training, so sit, lie down, walk on a lead, and the beginnings of come when called. And of course we need to teach puppies that handling is good, and they need to be handled and have their nails clipped and be brushed. That's really important as well.
What should owners, remember when they bring the puppy back home with this puppy degree?
Puppy kindy is just the beginning. It's just like pre-primary is for children. So ongoing training and education for the life of the dog is very, very important. All we're wanting is a cooperative relationship, just like a family group. You have mum or dad who calls the shots, and then you have the children who are supposed to, of course, follow that. So just like a puppy, unfortunately, puppies can't go out and earn, $50,000 a year and pay for their own stuff and their own credit cards. So it's really important that they do have to earn privileges, they have to earn pats, they have to earn treats, they have to earn their food, and through that you get a good working relationship and a good gentle relationship with your puppy.
Thanks, Jared. Important advice there for anyone who may have just gotten a puppy over Christmas. Next up, Jeremy is back this week to chat on alcoholism in communities. Jeremy discusses how the process of change needs to start by having a look at the culture, not alcohol, as a source of the problem. Jeremy, over to you.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Garland. In this segment we look at abuse. Abuse that happens within communities, physical, sexual or mental abuse. When we look at that whole process, we look at domestic violence. That's abuse. And it's a different type of category of abuse. It also signifies something that there's something going wrong. We need to look and we need to address that whole process of what's going wrong, because it's not only the abuse that's occurring, it's the system or the process that's happened some other time in my life or in someone's life for them to perpetrate such an act of aggression against someone else. And when we look at that aggression, we look at what's going in the minds of the individual. There's a disempowering process, the self-disempowering process, where a person feels disempowered. It's not real. It's completely an illusion. It's just an experience of the process of feeling. And then I become abusive and I become angry and I start to hurt the ones who I really love. So it's really important for us to look at that, mix all that with alcohol, drugs, and then you've got a potent mix, a social problem that's occurring in our society that we need to address, but we need to look at it and address it as an individual and to feel what is happening. And when we know what is happening around us, it is only then we can go into greater change. That means we're going into denial. We don't want to know about it. You know, if I've hurt my foot, I need to know that I've hurt my foot, because there's pain there. Pain's going to my brain is recognising the pain, and I need to understand that it's there in order for me to heal it. It's going to cause more problems within the community. No one wants to look at it because it's harming someone else. Abuse in Western society, domestic violence is abuse. You know, we can say, oh, those people are abusing their wives in this country, those people are abusing their families in this country, they're disempowering them, the whole process. We need to understand that it's happening here in Australia as well, with the numbers of domestic violence come before us, the numbers of people, the numbers of wives that are being beaten and put into places called refuges, and workers and social workers that are working in those fields, the children that have been battered. It's happened. We have to understand. In order to understand it, we need to accept it. Once we accept it, then we begin to find that there is a process and there is a way out. It's very simple. You've got to name it to claim it.
And I'm in Fremantle, and as you can see behind me, hundreds of containers are being loaded into this port every single day.
History is repeating for Magellan Metals, who have been suspected of breaching the transport conditions of lead through Fremantle. Although Magellan Metals insists the airborne lead levels were not above the health and safety limits, the findings showed otherwise, giving the government all the reasons to suspect them and conduct an independent analysis.
I'm here with Lee Bell, the Secretary of WA National Toxics Network. Lee, tell us, why is this such a big environmental catastrophe and how is it going to influence Fremantle and the people of WA?
Well, the real risk here in transporting lead carbonate in a powdered form is that lead is very toxic. At the moment, they have no known level of lead in the human system which is safe, and it particularly affects young children and builds up in their system, damages their IQ, and causes a whole range of other problems that can go on throughout the rest of their lives. So the risk with lead, and lead carbonate in particular, is that the dust can escape, it enters the environment, and it can never be removed. It doesn't break down because it's an essential metallic element, and so it stays in its hazardous form for very long periods of time, and children can be exposed, and the dust form that it's being moved in means that if there is an accident or an escape of the material, that the contamination can be spread very easily by wind and rain throughout the environment. If we were to have a major leak or a spill from the rail carts that are moving into Fremantle and it's blown around the area, you wouldn't be able to actually remove the lead. It can't effectively be cleaned up think the problem here is that the company is struggling to try and make out that there is no problem. The reality is that their testing inside these containers has been marred by all sorts of problems right from the beginning of the export through Fremantle. Up to 30% of the readings that they've taken with the instruments have failed. They've had equipment failure, inadequate equipment, people haven't been checking the filters properly, and then they say that the results that have gone to the laboratory to test for the lead in the containers, that the laboratory's got it wrong. So what we see here is a company that isn't in control of its own monitoring regime, and the reality for people who are concerned about this lead is it means that the safeguards aren't in place. And what was shown by the recent events is that not only were there problems with the equipment in doing the sampling, and not only were there problems at the laboratory in assessing those samples, but that the company actually withheld the information about potential breaches and lead escaping. They held that information for over 12 months without informing the Environmental Protection Authority or the public. And that's a critical aspect of this whole issue, because it goes to the heart of the matter of whether or not the company can be trusted for moving this dangerous material around, and whether or not they breached their ministerial conditions to report these things to the EPA.
The company needs to come back with a result by the 17th of January, and then the government needs to take action. What do you think will happen in your opinion?
I think what will happen is that Magellan Metals will be able to sort of cobble together some sort of argument that the levels of lead within the containers are safe. It won't be a very convincing argument, but one thing they won't be able to do is they won't be able to explain why they withheld that data that they were supposed to provide under ministerial conditions to the EPA. I think the EPA cannot find them innocent, and I think that the EPA must recommend to the government that these lead exports be stopped.
Well, thank you very much, Lee Bell, for your time and your comment.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is Paul Frommer, who created the language spoken by the natives in the blockbuster film Avatar. So where do you actually start when creating a language like this?
Well, I didn't start from absolute zero because James Cameron had come up with a few words of his own. So I took those words, got a feeling of the sound he had in his mind, but then you begin talking about the entire sound system of the language. You begin talking about the morphology, which is how you build up words, nouns and verbs, how you put them together in phrases and sentences, and then how the language interacts with culture.
If you had to pick a language that this was most similar to, what would you say it was?
I don't know if I could take any one language as the basis of Na'vi. There are certain influences on the language. Some of the native indigenous languages of Australia have some of the same structural features as Na'vi, and in fact, one of the endings on nouns I discovered just by talking to someone is virtually the same in an indigenous language as it is in Na'vi. It's been very gratifying when people tell me that they've seen the movie and they say, you know, it sounds like a real language. It sounds totally natural, and I really liked the sound of it, and it just seemed to fit into the movie really well. It's also been tremendously exciting to see the growth of a Na'vi community, where fans really all over the world are embracing the language and trying to speak it and writing it. I'm now getting long emails written to me entirely in the language. There are people who are speaking it better than I can speak it. So that's been really quite gratifying.
So have they developed it from the rules that you set out, or how did they learn the language?
The fans got together, they formed a community online. They looked at the materials that were out there. They looked at the dialogue in the film. They looked at the few examples that I had given in interviews, and they kind of cracked the code. They kind of figured out what was going on, and the community now is helping me develop the language further, which is amazing.
Was there any particular part of the language that the actors loved or disliked?
Well, the actors all did a remarkable job with the language. None of them really learned it in the sense that they knew the grammar and they knew how to construct their own sentences. There were a few sounds that they had problems with. The ng sound at the beginning of where the ng sound was kind of a problem.
They wish you never invented it?
Perhaps. And then the funny combinations like tsk and sngauvik and something like that was kind of a problem. But they all rose to the occasion.
Would you be able to teach me how to say I see you?
I see. Okay, so it's 3 words.
Yeah.
First word is easy. Well.
Well.
Okay. The second word has that nga in the beginning. Ngati.
Nati.
Yeah, very, very nice. And the third word is kameye.
Kameya.
Well ngati kameye.
Well, nati kameya.
You're good. You're very good. You could be a speaker very, very soon.
Then I'd finally get to meet Sam Worthington.
Absolutely, Steph. Beautiful.
Is there any particular scene in Avatar where the language is being used that you like the most?
Gee, that's interesting. There's a wonderful interpretation scene where Jake, played by Sam Worthington, of course, who was a native of Perth.
Rockingham boy?
Yeah, absolutely. Was rallying the troops, and the warrior Tsute is interpreting for him.
That they can take whatever they want, and no one can stop them.
And so that was kind of fun to work with, because I had to come up with an interpretation that wouldn't take up much more space than the actual language. And that took a little bit of doing, but it was kind of fun.
We've come down to the Perth Cultural Centre to have a conversation with Theo Fakos. Theo's a photographer for the Sunday Times. Thanks for coming along today, Theo.
Thank you.
Now, Theo recently won the WA Media Award for feature photography. He received the award for the photograph of the Danny Green fight. Theo, tell us a little bit about that photo.
Well, I know for a fact it didn't last long, but it was a sports job initially. I was asked to work a afternoon shift to just cover a shift, and I obliged for the Sunday Times, which I work for. And anyway, it was a sports job, but it actually turned into a controversial news story. The minute Briggs hit the canvas, I think 34 seconds or so after, I don't know exactly the time frame, but it wasn't very long. It was under a minute. I realised then it turned into a controversial news story. So I continued shooting from where I was, and just basically gathered individual pictures. So it turned into a picture essay in a controversy over a boxing match, and a big boxing match at that.
How long have you been in photography for?
1978.
Okay, that's a heck of a long time.
That's it,
yeah.
If not earlier. I was always fascinated by photography as a kid, and just loved the way that, when you drop the paper and the developer appeared. It was like magic, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of the hat sort of thing.
But it doesn't work that way anymore, does it?
No, digital actually has made it, I believe, for the photographer, if you think back to what you had to do, and there were times in the film, the days of film developing and so forth, there were times I'd sit in a cupboard and process colour film in a 2-shot process to get the film out, then scan it, where today you're looking at the back of the camera, looking at what you've got, and get a fair idea of the quality that you're achieving, and then you continue shooting it.
And you can deliver those photos
straight up. Absolutely, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. All right, well, let me ask you a really controversial question then.
Here we go.
Is it the photographer or is it the equipment?
I think it's both. I think it's what you see in your head as a operator and what you inspire to get as a photographer, and really what's on the end of your hand. If you've got the good equipment, and I know there's a saying, I think it is, a good tradesman never blames his tools, but these days we've got really good gear, like amazing equipment that we're supplied with, and brilliant lenses and so forth. And the capabilities of what these cameras can do today is just second to none.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
Last question.
Yes.
Now you've won this award, what does the future hold for you? What else is there left in the world for you to take photos of?
Absolutely everything. I live and breathe it. I get given opportunities every day, different opportunities to shoot and express myself. And I don't actually call it a job, in a sense. It's a life. It's to me, it's basically, I live and breathe it. I love it. When I'm going home from work, I don't actually switch off. If I see something happening, like a news job, I attack it. I jump in and go for it.
Absolutely.
It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not a job. To me, I feel really blessed with what I've done. Sometimes I actually pinch myself and think I'm getting paid really good money, decent money, to travel around and meet interesting people and see great places and create some great images. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, congratulations again on the award.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us on Undercurrent.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
David, thanks for joining us. Atlas Iron's had a fantastic year. Where did it all start?
Well, you know, I suppose Atlas more or less actually started here in Black Tom's, to be honest. I think that there was lots of relationships that were built prior. But I was having lunch with someone just over there and they said, you know, David, I know someone who's got a few tenements and we're looking for someone to package it up and go list a company. And that was the shell that became Atlas.
You played a pretty big role in the RSPT and then the newly formed mining resource rent tax. Why was it so important for you to stand up and put your point of view across?
Well, firstly, with the resource super profits tax, the more I understood about the tax, the more I realised it was going to destroy the fabric of the Australian economy. It was Armageddon. It was the worst thing that you could do to our country, given what I knew about our economy, right? And the more I researched into it, I realised how it literally started to make me feel sick. And I started to realise that there were other people who didn't understand the impact of this tax. There were people who needed to know that this tax was going to damage their livelihood and opportunities for their children and the services that we all enjoy here in Western Australia and all Australians. And so that's what motivated me. And as I started to convince people and spell it out to them how simply bad this was, and they understood it, it gathered momentum, and off we went.
Where do you think it's at the moment?
It's a good question. At the moment, the policy transition group has collected the information, and you know, we recognise that there's some people there who've learned a lot about the junior space. And one of the things that they've learned is that as soon as you're producing over 1.4 million tonnes per annum, you're going to get hit with a super profits tax, effectively. Now, most people recognise that 1.4 million tonnes per annum is not a lot of iron ore, particularly when the majors are producing over 150. So that, you know, there's a number of things that need to be addressed, and I don't know if they all can be. Hopefully they will.
David, there is a perception out there that all the managing directors and the CEOs of mining companies all drive home in their Ferraris and take home suitcases of money. Is that the case?
No, it's not. No, it's not. There are people in there who are running those businesses who are paid well, and I don't think that I'm not. I think I am being paid well, right? But they're the things that people can see. Okay, what people don't see are those managing directors who have lost everything and are under enormous stress and are taking huge risk on behalf of shareholders, carrying huge liability. Like, say for example, the safety of all of the people on our sites rests with me.
Yep.
So, and I can't sidestep that. Yep. So there's 350 people running around the bush now that, you know, like I'm responsible for. And you basically, to deliver that shareholder value and to look after those people, you want to get good people filling those roles. And often you've got to pay more to get those people, and that's a part of life.
As a country boy, where are you from?
I'm from Bunbury, in the southwest of Western Australia.
Is that important to you? Is that who you are? Is that David Flanagan?
It is. You know, I am from Bunbury, and I'm proud of that, and I really cherish the fact that I got to grow up down there, and across the road from our house was bush. Yeah. You know, we did live in a few different houses though in Bunbury.
And when David Flanagan's not heading up a major iron ore company, what's he doing?
Yeah, well, hanging out with the family. So you've got a list of priorities, and first, you know, is the family. So basically, this morning playing cricket with Jack down the side of the house, making things with my daughter. She's very much into craft, and of course Sarah. And aside from that, I'd love to go fishing if I could do something. I went salmon fishing in Albany a few months back. It was fantastic.
Let's get on to that. Western Australia. I always finish off a question is, what do you love about Perth? What do you love about Perth?
I love the air. I think the air is just beautiful. I love the open space and the beaches. They're just beautiful.
Beautiful. David, thanks for joining us.
No worries, too easy.
Cheers.
Bloody pleasure.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight. We'll be back next week with another episode of Undercurrent. I catch up again with our security boys to speak about how to keep safe at events. Very timely with Australia Day coming up. Nick speaks to ABC broadcaster James Lush. Jeremy will have a chat about the importance of remembering Aboriginal culture. And we have an exclusive interview with translator and linguist Frank Parmos about his amazing translation of the Bao Ninh book, The Sorrow of War. If you'd like to get involved with Undercurrent, or you've got a story that you think we should cover, please get in touch with us here at West TV. Why not visit our website at wtvperth.com.au. We'll be back next week and would love to have your company again. Many thanks to the crew who tirelessly work in the background to make Undercurrent happen. I'm Jason Jordan. Good night.